Westfield Memorial Hospital provides high-quality health care to residents of Western New York, offering patients the most sophisticated medical advancements while keeping the ease and familiarity of a community hospital. Support for Chautauqua Sunrise has been provided by WRFA 107.9 FM, Jamestown's public radio station, streaming online 24/7 at WRFALP.com. Low power to the people. Chautauqua Sunrise is made possible by a grant from Fredonia Place, a continuing care retirement community providing dignity in a modern luxury environment. Meter's Restaurant, a family tradition for over 50 years in downtown Ripley, is a proud supporter of Chautauqua Sunrise. Meter's provides all-day dining, banquet services, and custom catering, specializing in pie. Funding for Chautauqua Sunrise is provided in part by the Chautauqua County Industrial Development Agency, with offices in Jamestown, Dunkirk, and Westfield, helping businesses to prosper throughout Chautauqua County. From supporting people with disabilities to enjoy great lives to providing health care services that are available to anyone, the Resource Center has been improving our county for more than 60 years. Learn more about how the Resource Center makes a positive difference in people's lives. From the Access Chautauqua Studios in Mayville, it's Chautauqua Sunrise. Chautauqua Sunrise is hosted by Doc Hamels and supported by the award-winning volunteers at Access Chautauqua. We are here to share local news, colorful interviews, and events of interest to everyone. Chautauqua Sunrise is broadcast live Saturday mornings each week from 9 to 10 a.m. Send events via email or call us live. Check us out on YouTube and Facebook. And now, from the Access Chautauqua Studios, it's Chautauqua Sunrise.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Doc Hamels. Welcome to Chautauqua Sunrise. So glad you could join us here at Access Chautauqua. We're on Spectrum 1301. We are streaming around the world. And for those of you on Tuesdays at 1 o'clock on WRFA 107.9, low power to the people. Thanks for listening in, joining in, watching. And also remember, anytime you want to see this show again, we are on at 2 and 8 every day on channel 1301. And we're on Facebook and we're on YouTube. We're everywhere. Thanks to the crew here at Access Chautauqua. Got a great show in store for you the next 2 weeks. Today and next Saturday, we're going to be looking at some Chautauqua County history. And so if you're into that, this is going to be a lot of fun. All right. Hope you're doing well. The weather is the weather. I don't know. I don't even know what to say about it anymore. I went and cut the grass yesterday, and I almost had to put pontoons on it at one point. I was sloshing through water, and it had been dry for a couple days. And mosquitoes seem to be backing off. I was getting bombarded one day, but not too bad yesterday. For those of you who are just joining us here in Chautauqua County, welcome. Hope you're enjoying your stay here. I know many people vacation in the area and sometimes tune in. Lots of stuff going on here in the county, and we're going to share a little bit of that here in a minute. One of the things I always encourage people, if they don't know what's going on, ask. Everybody in the county here is just more than happy to share information with you. Most people will say they've never met a stranger in Chautauqua County. We take great pride in that. Yesterday I was packing up my bike after a ride, and the fellow with another bike on the back of his truck came up, and then he was asking me where a gas station was, and we started chatting a little bit. And he had been riding up in Maine and just made a new friend. So anyways, happy to share information with you, and so are many of our residents here. So hope you're healthy and well, and getting your COVID shots. That's important. A lot of people have been hesitant to get them, and I've been watching, sadly, there's been some folks that waited too long, and they said, I just wish I had gotten the dang shot. and they passed away, or they got really, really sick, or whatever. It's a real thing. I'm not going to pontificate on that whole situation. I'm just telling you, I know people, I've heard people, I've met people, I lost people because of COVID, and it's rearing its head again. So please, please, please be careful. Do what you got to do. The shot is painless. It's hard. It takes nothing at all to get the shots, and they're free of charge. Okay, enough on that. This is a call-in show. If you have a question or a comment, you can give us a call at 753-5225. Club or organizations having a fundraiser. Lots of people are getting back into the swing of things, and we're happy to share the information for you. Just call Randy, or somebody picks up the phone, gives you the information, or they'll put you live right on the air. This is Jim Kurtz. I know you're listening. You watch the show quite often. I got a story to share with Jim. Jim called me the other day about the memorial they're doing for the veterans in Mayville, and he wanted to know if we could share some information, because there's a big event coming up here in October. So I went to answer the phone on our landline, which I seldom do, but I just had this feeling I should answer the call, because nobody ever calls me on my landline except, you know, the ones that want to tell me about my insurance lapsing or my car warranty or something. Well, anyways, so I left the table where I had my lunch, went to talk to Jim, came back, and my charges, my dog and my daughter's dog, looked very guilty, and they had eaten my breakfast burrito. So Jim, you owe me a burrito. Funny little story. Anyways, Jim understands how we work here, and he was giving me information, and we were setting things up. So your club or organization could do the same thing, but just as easy to give us a call here, or you could email us at chautauquasunrise.com. I guess that's right, chautauquasunrise at gmail.com. I always forget that part. Thank you. And send the information there. All right, I got a few announcements, and then I want to get to my guests, because we got a lot of cool things to talk about today. All right, before I get to the actual things that Jeff printed up for me, I want you to know that one of my underwriters, Meter's Restaurant, is having a big deal next weekend. It's going to be a lot of fun, and the proceeds all go to the school. It's a car, motorcycle, and truck cruise-in for 2 days, the 28th and the 29th. And it runs, I believe, from like 11 to 4, 11 to 5, something like that. And it's right there at the school property and at the restaurant. And yours truly and the Growlers will be performing Sunday from noon to 3. So if you want to do something, it's free of charge to go and look at all the cars and trucks and vintage motorcycles and that. And it should be a lot of fun. Also, be careful if you're riding around the county right now. There's something called the Grand Fondo, and it's, I don't know, maybe more than 100 bikers are out there, bicyclists, cyclists, and they got their lights on and that, but are you kidding, 500? Oh, I only saw part of them then this morning. 500 riders are riding all around the area here, and there's different routes they're taking, but please be careful. Give them a little room on the road, because they are riding 2 and 3 across, but you'll see them, but just be aware of that. All right, speaking of riders, I want to do a shout out to Jeff and Galen Zook. They rode for the ride for Roswell a couple weeks ago, and Jeff was representing our group here. Randy and I, we passed this year. We just weren't ready to ride, but they rode, what, 45 miles, Jeff? Something like that, 45 miles. So good on you guys. And they were part of the entire fundraiser that raised, last I saw, over $5 million. So that's pretty darn awesome. So good on the Zook guys. All right, let's see what else I got here. I mentioned last week, I'm going to mention a couple more weeks in a row. If you have unused, with envelope, Christmas cards that you do not want anymore, my Rotary Club, the Westfield Mayville Rotary Club, will be happy to accept them. And what we will do is then turn around and use them this Christmas to send them to folks that are shut-ins, the VA, medical centers, Meals on Wheels folks, and brighten up their Christmas holiday a bit. Last year we put out 2,000 cards. the year before, 1,800. So it's been a nice project, and if you have them, if you know Linda Dunn in Westfield, you can give me a call here at the studio. I'll come pick them up. Any Rotarian in the area will be glad to accept them. And I mentioned envelope because a lot of times we get cards, but you know, you get a card this big and the envelope is this big because they got mixed and mismatched, excuse me. So if you could make sure that they are with proper envelopes. Okay? Great. All right, so let me get to our announcements that are printed up here, and this is from Infinity. All right. Calling all teenagers. Infinity Visual and Performing Arts is excited to announce a new series of student-driven classes, experiences, and learning opportunities designed by teenagers for teenagers. Launched in 2020, Generator Z is a teen-led initiative to reimagine the future of after school. More than 1,000 generators from across Southeast Michigan and Western New York shared their after-school experience and insight online. I think we have a slide for this too. After-school providers stepped up with ideas to turn the teen insight into action. Over 90 providers across both regions received $4 million to bring their ideas to life in the next year, and Jamestown's own Infinity Visual and Performing Arts is one of them. Wow. Generator Z is driven by teens empowered by Lakeshore Connections with support from the Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Foundation. Okay, and if you're interested, you can go to generator-z.org. Infinity read the Generator Z ideas from teens across Western New York and listened to our own students at the Infinity Center to develop a program idea that we cannot wait to have more local teenagers help us bring to life. The grant award will allow teens at the Infinity Center to create original music, theater, dance, and artworks through original labs. You have no idea what I would have given as a teenager to have this. Oh my gosh. Listen to this. With their completed original works becoming final projects such as original albums, books, framed displays, videos, and a whole lot more. Wow. Funding will also provide area teens with opportunities to develop portfolios, attend student-driven discussion groups to talk about the topics that are important to them, attend performance workshops to learn skills such as performance technique, stage and equipment troubleshooting. Boy, we could use that. MC skill, not here, my band that is. MC skills and more, participate in performance events and opportunities, and even help to plan field trips and special workshops. Shane Hawkins, the executive director, says the following: "This was my favorite grant that I have ever worked on. I love that youth voice was the driver and that we were able to incorporate every creative and advanced performance idea we've always dreamed of being able to offer to Infinity students. The funders' approach was incredibly unique and impressively visionary. We're so excited to follow the students' lead and watch this unfold." Along with all the incredible new learning and performing opportunities that will be available at the Infinity Center, with the support of this grant, Infinity has hired a new full-time artistic director, Jamie Lee Bonfiglio Davis, to implement this programming, connect students and their families with opportunities, and strengthen Infinity's performance and talent showcasing experiences for students. Now, just a little plug, probably the last 3 or 4 years, at Christmas time, we've had the Infinity students here and perform, and if you've seen them perform, they're just outstanding. Last year, I just watered right up my eyes. I just couldn't believe how good it was, especially that one fellow with the trumpet. Holy mackerel, and some of those singers are just outstanding. Hawkins also added, we are kicking off our new program year in a big way, and a big part of that is adding Jamie Lee to our full-time staff. She's been a popular Infinity instructor for many years and brings a unique set of skills to the program and performance team. Our instruction team is so strong, and this grant will allow us to add new instructors. So, a lot going on there, and I'm not going to keep on going because there's a lot here to talk about. But if you're interested in Infinity, you have a young person That's, thank you. If you're interested in getting more involved, you can give them a call at 664-0991, or you can go to Infinity Performing Arts, all one word, .org, and check out their website. I can't say enough about this group. I've helped fundraise for them. I've visited them. I performed with the students. It's just really, really a cool organization. Hey, if you want something to do this coming week, go to the movies. Enjoy this Way Back Wednesday classic on August 25th with 2 shows at 7 and 9:10. It's the 30th anniversary screening, Thelma and Louise. A bored housewife and a straight-laced waitress at a coffee shop are best friends who are sick of what they settled for, deciding to escape the tedium of their everyday lives. The pair sneak off in Louise's 66 T-Bird convertible for a 3-day fishing trip with no husbands, no boyfriends, and no problems. But things don't go quite according to plan when an encounter with a drunken, foul-mouthed would-be rapist transforms their quiet getaway into a cross-country escape that will change their lives forever. Then, catch this movie the following week, the 27th at 9 p.m. Let's see here. Chef, writer, adventurer, provocateur, Anthony Bourdain lived his life unabashedly. Roadrunner, a film about Anthony Bourdain, is an intimate, behind-the-scenes look at how an acrimonious chef became a world-renowned cultural icon. From Academy Award-winning filmmaker Morgan Neville, this unflinching look at Bourdain's life reverberates with his presence in his own voice and in the way he indelibly impacted the world around him. We used to watch him from time to time, and I thought, can he say that on TV? And he was everything that just was written about him. So if you're interested, this should be a very interesting movie. Okay, coming up here, Healthy Relationship Conference 2021. Let's see, a community and church response to domestic violence. This is going to be held from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. It's free of charge. Opening remarks will be held and given by Mayor Eddie Sundquist. This year's conference will be examining how we as community members can address domestic violence with our neighborhoods, community, and county. Speakers will cover topics that include the problem and extent of interpersonal violence, the roles of churches, citizens, and community, how we can help those in need, both directly and indirectly, and how to create community action through intervention at a neighborhood, church, community level type organization. It is the mission of a new center to reduce or eliminate interpersonal violence by empowering those impacted by domestic and sexual violence. The keynote speaker will be Dr. Elizabeth Gerhardt, called What Are We to Do? The Church, the Community, and the Work of Domestic Violence Intervention. So keep that in mind. It's going to be on September 30th, 9 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. And I suspect we'll get more information on that, the wheres and the whens, and so forth. All right, finally, we have this last slide, Triple P. Parents stay positive with Triple P, Positive Parenting Program. They're back, Justin, the P's. Identify some of the reasons for the problem behavior, including parent traps. Keep track of the problem behavior. Use positive parenting strategies for preventing the problem before encouraging good behavior. Use positive parenting strategies for dealing with the problem behavior if it happens. Continue to refine parenting plans with Triple P, Positive Parenting Program. Identify some of the reasons for the problem behavior. Wait a minute, this is double print. Thank you. Our 2-hour discussion group can help you dealing with the disobedience. This is going to be, wait a minute, hang on a minute. Hassle-free shopping with children, August 26th. Okay, that's the last of the series. Who parents with children ages 0 to 12? When? 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Where? Via Zoom. Cost? Absolutely free. So check out Prevention Works, and you can find them in the phone book. You can find them online. And with that, we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back.
Honorary Forest Ranger Betty White here, lending a hand to my dear friend Smokey Bear. Because for years, he's only said,
only you can prevent wildfires.
But there's a lot more to say. Like, if you park your car on tall, dry grass, the hot exhaust pipe can start a wildfire. So keep the animals safe, especially the cute shirtless one. Go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention.
Okay, words of advice as far as taking care of our natural resources. I want to welcome back just a delightful guest that has been here. I don't know how many times you've been on the show. Enough. We share the passion for history and research. So welcome back, Michelle Henry, our Chautauqua County historian /
Thank you.
You have another title.
Yeah, Records Management Coordinator.
I knew the word records was in there. But we're going to talk historian today, right?
Yes, yes.
And I suspect they all go together. So I wrote to you and it says, come on the show and you can pick the topic, and you did. So we're going to delve into what your office does and share some really cool pieces of information. But before we do that, how does one become the county historian? Do you have to have certain credentials, or was it civil service, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's not a civil service position. There are suggested qualifications that the state museum and state historian's office developed. So, there's different requirements for town historians and county historians. Typically, they would like to see somebody with a master's degree and with a specialization in history or social studies, or in my case, anthropology. So
that will do it.
Yes, yes. So those are the things that they expect. And also, it helps if you have grant writing experience or other writing. You kind of learn as you take the position how much public speaking you have to do. So if you're not comfortable with that, you need to get comfortable because you do a lot of public speaking.
Yep.
But that's the fun part. That's when you really get to get out and I learn something every time I go out and do a program. I'm not just there to give information. I get it as well. So, so it's been a very rewarding position to have.
And you work with the local town historians as well, right?
Right. Yeah, we try to meet a couple times a year. Of course, lately that hasn't happened. But, I try to let them know about things like the historical marker grant programs that are available, any other projects. We work together a lot during the county's bicentennial to do a history fair, and we had other events throughout the year. So, I always encourage them if they have something they'd like to do in conjunction with another historian or group of historians, to let me know.
And it's by state regulation or whatever that every town should have a historian, right?
Yeah, New York State, I think, is the only state that requires every municipality or every local government to have a historian. So there should be one for every village, town, city, county.
Very cool.
And people who contact us for help with their research are always just amazed that there are so many historians in the state.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah, to help. So.
Okay, so what are we going to talk about today?
Well, I wanted, in addition to what you mentioned, I'm also on the board of the County Historical Society. And that is an organization that's very near and dear to my heart because I worked there when I first moved back to this area. It's headquartered at the Mcclure Mansion Museum in Westfield. And last year, 2020, would have been the 200th anniversary of the house being completed. And we were hoping to be able to have some programs to highlight the house and the fact that, it's the very first brick building in the county. It sat in the center of the village of Westfield for 200 years, and we just weren't able to do anything about it.
For those of you that are listening that may not be familiar or are new to the area, it's basically in the four corners of Westfield, and if you're facing towards Buffalo, it would be on your right side at the light, and it's kind of a little bit back from the road, and there's like a little park area with a fountain and things like that now, right?
Right. So it's the Village Park, and
James Moore Park, right?
Right, and James Mcclure, who built the house, designed it that way. So when he built the house, he donated the front to be used as a village commons, so the village park. And then he donated property at the two corners to the Episcopal Church and the Presbyterian Church. So he had a pretty clear vision of who he wanted his neighbors to be and how he wanted to have the front be a common space for the village.
Nice. So why is it called Moore Park?
James Mcclure's grandson, William Moore, inherited the house.
Kept it in the family.
And in 1938, when he died, he left the house to the village and stipulated that the park be called Moore Park.
If I'm not mistaken, I think you told me this, the Mcclure Mansion was the first brick building in Chautauqua County, is that right?
Right.
Wow.
Right, I know. I mean, it's really impressive because, you know, in 1818, when he started building the house, we were still very much the western frontier. You know, the War of 1812 had ended, which had really squashed settlers coming here. You know, nobody wanted to come here with, you know, the British potentially coming right across the lake. Right. So, you know, after the War of 1812, we were only just starting to try to encourage people to come again to settle here, and everybody was pretty much living in a log structure. You know, early settlers, that's primarily what they built. They cut down the trees from their property and built a structure out of it. And Mcclure had come here as a wealthy young man, so he had grown up in a substantial brick house in Pittsburgh. So he married a local girl and wanted to raise his family in a structure that he was accustomed to. He had the bricks built or made here. He hired carpenters from Pittsburgh to come and do the construction. And they worked from sunup till sunset and were paid 50 cents a day. So, so after about a year and a half, in 1820, the house was finished. And there weren't any other brick structures here.
Justin? Could you tell us, you mentioned about the, they cut all the trees down, but there was something in this area that they made. Was potash?
Potash, yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I found that extremely interesting.
Yeah, so that was one way that the early settlers could actually earn cash. So when you cut down the trees and you burned them, and then there was a way you could treat the ashes with, somehow you soak them in water, and it created something called potash, which they would, I think, pack into hollowed out logs and then ship to the cities. And
this was a big deal. I mean, nobody else had it in this area, and they were making soaps and things out of it.
Well, right. I mean, right. So that was, you know, they're having, you know, coming to a frontier area. There weren't, you know, any businesses. So that was one way that a settler could create a cash product off their property.
Before they even planted their crops, right?
Right, right.
And then there was something called pearl ash?
Yeah, it's basically the same sort of thing, but some of it was used for, like in the same way we use baking soda now, so it was actually a baking product.
Amazing.
So, right. So, you know, and James Mcclure came to Westfield, he walked here from Pittsburgh. So I think, you know, all of us take a lot of things for granted. And the fact that a lot of our early settlers came on foot is remarkable to me. So he pretty much walked here from Pittsburgh. He explored the Lake Erie shoreline and decided that Westfield had a great potential for growth, and that was because of the waterways between Lake Erie, Chautauqua Lake, and because most transportation at that time was by water.
And that's what they they call portage-in or portage, right, from Chautauqua Lake to Erie, Lake Erie.
Right, to Lake Erie, right. So that was So that was the shortest route. Basically, Chautauqua Lake allowed folks to get to the Gulf of Mexico. I mean, you know, you could literally.
Isn't it amazing to think about that?
Right, right. So you could, you know, put logs on Chautauqua Lake, float them down the lake, get to the Allegheny, the Ohio. I mean, right.
So past Pittsburgh all the way down through.
Right, right. So Mcclure was a businessman, and he recognized the potential at that time for development in Westfield. And, you know, the road east-west was already pretty well established, you know, Buffalo to Erie as a, you know, foot traffic. So it was called the Crossroads before it was called Westfield. And so the chunk of land that he purchased is pretty much now the entire village of Westfield. So he purchased all of that. He built buildings across Main Street and had a row of business buildings built. So
he really had big vision.
yes.
I mean,
yes.
wow.
Yeah.
Now, I have a question for you, okay? Now, from what I was reading, before Mcclure was here, this whole area was part of Portland. And there was big, huge pieces, tracts of land, and like Batavia was one area, the Holland Land Company, and Portland was the big chunk, and then eventually broke down into Westfield, Brockton, and Ripley, right? Am I right on that?
Well, yeah. The county couldn't be officially established as a county until we had 500 tax-paying inhabitants. Ooh. So that happened in 1811. That's when the county was established. And at that time, we had 2 towns. So the county was pretty much divided right down the middle, north, 2 sections north to south. And it was Pomfret and Chautauqua. So we had, our entire county government was run by 2 men. You can imagine that. They had 1 meeting a year, and the first county budget for the entire county was $86.87.5.
And a half, well, quick, they did have half cents in those?
Yes.
Because I have half cents.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that was the county budget in 1811.
Amazing. So
then from those towns, all of our other towns developed as their population warranted.
Subdivided.
Right. And the Holland Land Company had divided all of Western New York up into grids. And so most of our towns are about 6 miles square. So I'm visualizing a map in my head because that was about how far a person could travel to do business in those days, in a day.
So I was always told, and it kind of bears out, it's about 8 miles from town to town. Same idea, right?
Right.
Because that's a horse and wagon could go back and forth.
Right. So our towns are geographical blocks, which is confusing for people when they're trying to do research here because, for example, the town of Pomfret isn't really on a highway map because it's not a settled entity, but the village of Fredonia, is in Pomfret. Right. So people will contact me and they'll say, well, I think my family was in a town that doesn't exist anymore called Pomfret. I'm like, well, it's still there.
It's still there.
It's still a local government. It just isn't exactly defined as well. But so, yes, so Ripley actually was chunked out of Chautauqua before Westfield was.
Right.
Ripley and Portland used to meet, and then Westfield was taken from each of them.
Middle of that, yeah.
Right. So Westfield was formed in 1829 as a town.
Right.
So, so that's how the towns all grew.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating to think about all that, and I think they're cutting down trees and then people always ask this question is, what about the Indians? There were no real Indians here at the time, was there? I mean, from what I read, they were pretty much gone. Some stragglers here and there, but nothing at that time.
Right, yeah. So there had been some major conflicts between the Indians that were here in the 1600s.
Right.
And so the groups that had been here prehistorically weren't here any longer. There are some sites, there's some mound sites that go back even farther than that, and then there was a village site that was excavated on the shore in Ripley on Route 5. So we know obviously that they occupied the area, but there
not
wasn't
at the time of these towns being formed.
Right.
Cool.
So, yeah. So the mansion is to me just it's an amazing testament to our first settlers. That. They were coming to a place that, like when they talked about going west in those days, they weren't talking about, Arizona, New Mexico.
No,
they were talking about
here.
Western New York.
This was it. This was the frontier.
Right. So, so Mcclure came here in about 1806, and there was already a man named David Eason here with his family. Eason Hall. And actually, the more research I've done on the family, I realize that the connections aren't, he didn't just happen to stroll here from Pittsburgh and meet the Easons. The Easons were also from southwestern Pennsylvania.
Oh, wow.
So I'm guessing there could have easily been some sort of a connection or association before they even got here.
Answer me this question. Have you found in those kinds of situations that there's a lot of intermarrying among these big families and that they all kind of came together eventually? Because, you know, like you think about how do these towns form? Well, they were either sponsored or they had blood, cousins or relatives. I mean, it's just what you're saying. There's all these connections that we don't even think about. We just think, oh, they just showed up. No, they didn't just show up.
Right.
There was reasons why they did.
Right. You know, packing up your entire family and moving usually wasn't done randomly, you know, and oftentimes it was either somebody you knew from your church or your town or your family who had come before you.
Yeah.
And so when Mcclure came, we can't find him in the 1800 census. We think he was probably staying with the Easons. I'm sorry, 1810, because you know we're quite sure he was here. But when he decided to purchase land, he purchased this huge tract from David Eason, and he married Eason's sister.
There you go. So you proved my point. See, I didn't know that. Okay.
And then James's younger brother married David Eason's daughter.
Woo.
Yeah, so there are lots of family connections.
Right.
And, you know, we found that researching James and his children, that it seems as though his siblings, they were all very involved with each other in all of their businesses, and then they also seemed to help each other marry their children well. And so James Mcclure actually ended up with financial and land interests in Racine, Wisconsin, Chicago.
Really?
Yes, yes. And so
you wouldn't, you know, it's amazing because again, you got to think of the times that it was very, very rustic and very pioneerish, and now we think about it as like, wow, but it probably wasn't that big of a deal because there wasn't anything there. He had the vision perhaps to say, this is a good location to do this, or, you know, we could develop that, right?
Right, and I think, you know, so obviously there was a lot of commerce on the Great Lakes.
Yeah.
And there was a man named Gilbert Knapp who was in the Merchant Marines at the time. And so he was on the Great Lakes, and he purchased land in Portland, which at the time included Westfield, and ends up going to what is now Racine and settling it and calling it Gilbertsville after himself. But so he had a vision, you know, like James Mcclure. Well, Mcclure's son Alexander ends up marrying Gilbert Knapp's daughter.
Of course, there you go again.
So I think this this association that must have developed when Gilbert Knapp was here in Chautauqua County ended up Alexander Mcclure moved to Racine and started a bank there and was a co-president or on the board of a railroad that Gilbert Knapp's son and he invested in. So
we're talking big time money here.
Big money. When in the 1860 census, Alexander Mcclure's net worth was $53,000, which is a lot of money back in 1860. Yeah.
So just for the sake of discussion, what became of the line of the Mcclures? Is it still around, or did it die off?
Well, that's a really good. I'm surprised how many of his children either died without children or their children died young.
Because I've never heard of any Mcclures in the area.
Right, and there aren't any in the area. There are Mcclures, just like everywhere else, that are descended from Mcclure's brothers.
Right.
It was a big family. And Mcclure's nephew became the governor of Missouri. So I mean, they all seem to do quite well, but like Mcclure's, and I wonder, and I don't know, I wonder if it was tuberculosis that was causing so many folks to die so young.
Is that called consumption?
Right, in those days it was called consumption. And Mcclure's wife died relatively young, and his daughter, another daughter married a man who became a financier in Chicago. and did very well for himself. Founded a medical college in Chicago, was involved in the banking industry, invested Mcclure's money very well. And she died at 29.
Did James Mcclure live a long time?
Mcclure did himself. He lived, he died in 1876, and he was born in like 1785. So he was.
So he had a long business life.
He had a long life. His son James died young and unmarried, not real young, but like I think he was in his 40s in Westfield. So, like I said, I don't know if that was the cause, but you know they didn't know that it was contagious at the time, and so it's quite possible that it was prevalent in the family.
Now you brought a picture that we were going to share, so this is kind of interesting too. So Justin, if you want to zoom in on that, so tell us the story behind all that.
Well, I love when you're doing history and you find connections to people and the county that you would never know otherwise. This is a block of buildings in Chicago that was owned by McClure's son-in-law, Alfred Davison. And you can see this is a substantial block. They're brick and stone buildings, 5 stories tall. And apparently Chicago was built on a swamp. And when they were trying to put in a sewer system for the city, they couldn't put it underground because it was so swampy. So what they had to do is raise the entire city and the streets up 6 to 10 feet. So you just think about that. Think about feet. Right. So, there are tons of stories about, the mud. And one of the stories I just thought was so funny, there was a man who was seen, buried up to his chest in the mud on the street. And somebody said, "Can I give you a hand?" And he said, "No, I'm on my horse, and I don't want to lose him." So anyway, they had to raise the entire city. Well, George Pullman from Brockton, who as a young man went out to Chicago, devised a way using screw jacks to elevate entire city blocks, and supposedly businesses were not disrupted. So he would use as many as 600 screw jacks under a city block, and they would have 600 men simultaneously turning the screws and raise these buildings.
What era would this have been?
1860s.
Wow.
70s.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so so Pullman made a great deal of money out there with this system he devised, and then he went on to do the Pullman sleeper cars, which I think is what everybody knows him for. But when Pullman died in the 1890s, his net worth was $62 million.
Holy mackerel.
So, but it was really fun to find this story, and this photo is from the Chicago Historical Society, and in the text with it tells the story of them raising this building, and they mention Alfred Davison, who was McClure's son-in-law, and the fact that he had been the financial manager for the wealthy families from the East, including the McClures. So
unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I've mentioned this in the past. I'm the town historian for Ripley, and and I know you know a lot about our town as well as the county. I don't think today people really appreciate the ingenuity and creativity that has come out of our communities. People, for some reason, like to put themselves down, or they don't think that much of what we have. But what we have is incredible history and the giants of industry that have come through here. And we could spend all day talking about this. We have a lot to be proud of in this county from what I have read and seen. And I came from Buffalo originally, and that's a whole nother history, but exploring my hometown of Ripley now after all these years, I've been there just about 40 years, it's just so gratifying to know all this stuff. And now to hear this just down the road from where I live, and I am going to bet any money that there were connections with the Hamiltons. Lucius Hamilton, who was real busy in Ripley, he probably had something to do with this, and all the politicians of the day and that sort of thing, you know?
Right, right. I think everything that we have today, you know, obviously exists where it exists because of what happened before. And I think people don't stop to think about that. And I always tell people that our history is just simply more interesting than anyone else's.
Well, you know, and before you showed me this picture, I don't think you told me what the picture was. You just said they raised all these buildings, but I thought that was a picture of Westfield.
Oh.
From the Mcclure location, because you told me that Mcclure had done something with buildings across. So talk about that a little bit, would you?
Well, sure. I think Mcclure had a, you know, like I said, yeah, I think he was an astute businessman, and he wanted the town to get started in a way that I think he could kind of dictate, you know. So he built the buildings across the street, and he built where the Grand Theater used to be and where the Lincoln Bedell statue is now. There was a substantial hotel there that was supposedly the, you know, the nicest hotel between Buffalo and Cleveland. That was, you know, at that corner. So he, you know, he wanted the village to flourish, and of course everybody who came basically had to buy their parcel from him because he owned most of that area. So he was making money by, you know, building the village into a prosperous center.
He was taking,
and and the location was perfect for that. So
what does the record say about him as a person? Was he a pretty cool guy, or was he like this miser or curmudgeon?
I believe he didn't like to spend his money. And one of the reasons I think that is because he went to Chicago in 1854. And you know, I kind of wonder if he was just there to visit his money. I mean, he did have some grandchildren there, but you know.
We'll catch them on the way back around.
He ended up marrying, for the second time out there, a woman who was 30 years younger than him.
Okay.
So she was younger than his son and his daughter, who were still at home.
Whoa.
Brought her back to Westfield. And it seems as though she attempted to spend some money, and he didn't condone that. There are some civil actions against her and him for expenses that she incurred. And so it was an interesting lesson to me as well, because she hired somebody to build some wooden shutters for the house.
Okay, seems reasonable.
Total bill was like $16. The judgment was placed against James for the bill, and he appealed it, and he won. And the reason was, at the time, a married woman who did not own any property independently of her husband.
Oh, you're kidding.
The husband was not held liable for her debts.
Oh, shit.
So Mcclure was able to stiff the guy because the law said a married woman without her own assets couldn't, you know, her husband was not liable. Yeah. So, and then in his will, he left everything to his daughter. She was his only surviving child at that point, his daughter Catherine. And there's a codicil to the will, which is like an addendum, which says, under no circumstances shall my wife be named my executor or administrator of my estate. And in the will it says my daughter Catherine is to inherit everything, including the 12 silver spoons that are engraved with the name Ardelia, which is second wife, which my wife purchased without my consent.
Wow, so he really had his thumb on that. Woo, wow.
So, yeah, so when he passed away, his wife was entitled to her dower right, which was, I think, it turned out to be like about $8,000. But she was forced to leave the house.
Oh my gosh.
So his daughter Catherine did not take long to remove Ardelia from the mansion. So yeah, so it's an interesting, and I have a feeling, and I don't know, you know, it's kind of speculation, but I think he had a hand in making sure that each of his children married the person that he felt was a good financial fit.
So today, the Mcclure Mansion is the home of the Chautauqua County Historical Society, and people, are they able to visit it yet?
Well, we haven't been open because of the pandemic, and you know, of course, it's hard not to be open because there's so many wonderful things in there, and we used to give a lot of tours and have events. But we've been really busy. You know, the building has a new roof. It's going to have new porches. There's a project going on in the village to landscape the park and put in some historically appropriate plantings that are low maintenance. So that's really exciting. There's painting going on inside. And we've been using this time to go through the collection and do some really complete inventories. You know, the society has been in existence since 1886.
Woo.
So the County Historical Society has a long collecting history. And, you know, in the olden days, there weren't always as thorough records as we would use now for the collections. So we're trying to fine-tune everything, really assessing what we have. And so, you know, we've been really busy, I mean, even though we're closed.
All right, let's hold that thought. We have a call.
Okay.
Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Michelle. Good morning, Doc. This is Linda Spalding. I hate to even call in because, Michelle, your talk is so fascinating. I've learned so much.
Isn't it something?
Oh, yes. And we are very fortunate to live in Chautauqua County. There's so much history, so much. And so much is being done to research it and give information to the community about it. So I don't want to hold you up. Keep on with your explanations, and have a great weekend.
All right.
And a great week.
Linda, thanks for calling in. Good to hear from you.
Oh, good calling in. Thank you, and thank you again, Michelle.
Sure, thanks.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so the renovations, I remember there was the stairwell and the second floor. There was a bunch of work done. Is that pretty much all done now?
Right, yeah. So we've been doing that, just like every floor has had work done. The basement, the back area, the main entrance is being repainted on the inside, and new electrical, you know, some new wiring. So it's really great. You know, it's nice to be open, but then sometimes when you're open, you can't do some of the things that you really need to do. So we've really, I think, taken advantage and used the time well.
I think a lot of people did, different organizations.
Yeah.
So if it was open and somebody wanted to visit, they could take a tour eventually?
Oh, yeah.
Do you have a projected open date, or we just don't know yet?
I don't know, and I think just because of what's happening with the Delta variant, but we are planning a fundraiser. Previously, we used to have a fundraiser in June that we called our gala, and you've been involved in that.
Yeah.
And it was always, it's a big fundraiser for us, and because all the food and the drinks are donated and we sell tickets. We're going to do that in September. So September 11th.
9/11.
9/11. And the tickets are $50. It's such a worthwhile cause because it's just, you know, there's not a lot of ways we can raise money right now. And so there will be wonderful appetizers, hors d'oeuvres, and drinks, and some entertainment, I've heard.
Yes, I understand the Growlers will be playing. I think I've played there like 5 or 6 times.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always a fun time.
And, you know, we're looking at perhaps having it outside just because of the need to try to socially distance and not have huge crowds in the building. That will remain a fluid situation, but the date is set, and you know, it's so the museum will be open for that event. So anybody that wants to come and see what we have done so far could come.
Now there's memberships, right?
Sure. Yes.
Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. There's a basic membership is $20 a year, and then they go up from there for family and patrons and benefactors. So there's any level of giving is welcome. So that helps us. We do a newsletter 4 times a year.
I get it. Yeah, it's great.
And the newsletter is very informative. That goes out to members. Members can get in free. So, the programs are great, and we really want to get back to being able to do those as well. We have speakers come in from talk about all different parts of,
right. We've announced
aspects
a lot of those
county's
over the years
history.
here. Yeah.
Right. So, so we're anxious to get up and back, to our some of our activities that we've done before, and the gala will be our first big public event in a while.
Are they going to have the Civil War reenactment folks there?
Yes, and actually Abraham Lincoln and his wife will be there as well. So anybody that has some pressing questions for Abe will be able to ask them at that.
Yeah, he confiscated my guitar.
Oh.
He played. The last time you were there, he was there, and we did a photo shoot with him. And Mrs. Lincoln likes a particular Irish song that I sing, and so I had to sing it for her. But the deal was, I sang it, but I had to get a photo shoot with the president, so we did that. So it was a lot of fun.
Great, yeah, it is. It's just a nice event,
That's a great event.
So anyway, so I would encourage anybody to get a ticket if they would like to join us, and we'd love to see them.
Is there a phone number they can call? Or?
Yeah, the museum's number is 716-326-2977. And they have an office manager there, Sherry, who is wonderful and would be happy to give more information to anybody who might like it.
Michelle, we got about 2.5 minutes left. How about anything that people should know about your position at the county? Why would they contact you?
Well, the county archives is the largest repository of historical records in the county. So we have records dating back to 1811, the first year the county government was in existence. We are doing everything we can to continue to process them, make them available to the public. We digitize. The courthouse is open. People can make appointments to do research, or they can contact me and I'll help them out. There is just a treasure trove of historical information there.
Are you finding that now that we have Ancestry.com and whatever all those other things are, where they test DNAs and things, that it just seems like people really want to know more and more about their ancestry and their history and their records? I mean, to me, it has been a big spike, I think.
Absolutely, and I don't know if it's just because so many folks were housebound during the virus and they got bored or curious, but I saw a real uptick in the number of people contacting me who were just looking for information. And now, there is a lot of information online, but a lot of times what that will just do is give you new information about where your ancestors were at particular times. So it's actually increased our contact because people find out, oh, my ancestor was in Dunkirk in the 1850s, and they didn't know that before. So yeah, we're always more than happy to try to help folks.
Is that free of charge?
Well, I'm not going to do your family tree for you. So
okay, fair enough.
But I hold the records so that you can access them. So if you can't come in person and you want copies of something, there's a copy fee and there's a nominal search fee.
So like a library, really.
Right,
yeah.
Right.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, anything last minute that you want to say? Last half minute here?
Just, if you're curious at all about your history, find out if your community has so many of our local communities have their own museum.
Historians.
Yeah, find out what you have, and most of them are wonderful, little collections of stuff that's important to your community.
And a lot of times the town next door might have the information you need as well, because the lines were just blurred for so many years, right?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, Michelle, thanks for being our guest today. As always, this is so much fun for me. And as like Linda expressed, it's just so interesting. So thank you. Keep up the great work.
Oh, thanks. Thank you.
All right, folks, that's another Chautauqua Sunrise. We're a wrap. We're going to do this again next Saturday. We have another historian coming in from the Fluvanna area. And I won't tell you anything more on that, but it should be interesting. I've never met the person. So have a great weekend. Stay cool. Use the bug repellent, and we'll catch you again next week. Take care. Bye-bye.